Welcome to Shadow of Truth, and today is Thursday, March the 23rd, 2017, and your hosts are Dave Kranzler from InvestmentResearchDynamics.com and Rory Hall from thedailycoin.org. What's going on, Dave?
Yeah, same as usual. I just wake up every morning and watch this cartoon in living color that we get to watch every day between what's going on Wall Street, DC, and everything else going on in this country.
Yeah, it seems there's a massive disconnect between reality and the, as Gerald Celente calls it, the political reality show, because that's all it's become.
That's right.
It's ridiculous. Well, let's jump in and make something happen.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I mean, when I learned about all of this yesterday, an interview that I did with James Walchuk, and when he told me about it and started, explaining the impact, and in particular, he owns a zinc mining company, and the impact that it's going to have on zinc, which there are no new zinc mines, there are no readily available massive stockpiles like what you were saying with iron ore and copper. I mean,
zinc actually, there's a huge project being developed in Arizona. It's a giant polymetallic. It's zinc, lead, silver, and that's it used to be called Wildcat Mining, Wildcat Silver. Now it's just called AZ Mining. They rebranded their name because originally it was a big silver deposit, and then they happened in 2015. They were drilling part of the property, and they discovered this gigantic polymetallic deposit. So, zinc is. I think zinc is not quite in the same abundance that iron ore would be.
Right. And China just shut down 26 mines because of environmental concerns.
China has environmental concerns?
I know. When I heard that, it was like, oh my, since when? So it must be really bad. There must have been people dropping like flies, So
yeah.
I mean, because you don't hear that kind of thing going on. So, like I said, it must have been really bad. But the point is that this Mumbai or Delhi Mumbai industrial corridor is on top of what India is already doing with their solar project, and they're going to be incorporating bullet train. They've got plans for a bullet train, freight line, massive super speedway, not a speedway, but a super highway that is going to connect these two cities along with 24 other cities. So the commodities sector is about to be, once again, greatly impacted. I mean, China's already sucking up everything that they can for the One Belt, One Road, and now this project, which is really starting to get a foothold on the development. I've just started all research this morning, and they're eyeball deep in it. I mean, they're making moves, and zinc and lead and iron ore and copper, all these are going to be in great demand for what they're doing. And Japan is involved in some of the funding, and the Asian Development Bank is involved in most of the funding for this project, which is outside of the IMF and the BIS. So they won't be enslaved by those criminals. Maybe a different set of criminals, but at least it won't be the criminals that we know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't think that it would. I don't think that the Asian Development Bank or the AIIB, I don't think that they have the same type of criminal mindset that the IMF does, because it seems like that they want to work with people because they know that at the end of the day that it's going to benefit the that it's going to benefit China, period. They're going to be able to manufacture. They're going to be able to suck up a lot of the profits because of the manufacturing. So, I mean, that's just what I see. I mean, I may be completely wrong in that, but and it's not quite as big as the One Belt One Road, but it is a very, very significant project that's going on. It's been flying under the radar because there ain't nobody been reporting on it.
Yeah, what's interesting about it is that it sort of highlights this fact that there's all this sort of grassroots industrialization and modernization and advancement of culture and society going on in the Eastern Hemisphere, especially in these, the large population countries like India and China.
Yep.
And certainly a project like that is designed to facilitate the advancement of a middle class.
Right. Big part of it.
It kind of highlights the differences between what's going on in the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere. Where in the Western Hemisphere, China has a lot of debt. Their government has a lot of debt, and their corporations have a lot of debt. But the individuals over there don't have a lot of debt. I mean, if you look at the total public debt or the total debt, so it'd be the government plus corporate plus individual debt, city and municipal debt in this country, it's by far, as a percentage of GDP, it's by far the highest in the world. I mean, China's is high, but that's because the government's issued a lot of debt and the corporations have a lot of debt. But guess what China's offset that debt with?
Probably gold.
Right. So, you got that going on. And it's interesting that you talk about how it's the Asian Development Bank or the Asian Infrastructure Bank, whatever they call that thing, that's financing it, and that they don't seem to have the same malintent that the World Bank and the IMF have. And those, the IMF had malintent from the get-go.
Yes, they were born criminals.
There's things like, like I look at the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as kind of the counterparty to NATO.
Yep.
And if you just look at the two differences in the names, I mean, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I mean, that implies, there's a sense of conflict and belligerence in there. Oh, we have to have a treaty to cooperate. These guys, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it's like this is an organization where we're going to cooperate with each other.
Yep.
So it certainly highlights the contrast between, sort of the sun is setting on the west and rising in the east.
It absolutely is.
I guess literally and figuratively.
Because I mean, what also, Dave, what it shows is the fact that what you were talking about as far as the debt, how burdensome the debt that the West, not just the United States, but Europe and UK, how burdensome that debt is, because you have these massive, I mean, these are gargantuan sized projects. I mean, the One Belt, One Road is 11 times as big as the Marshall Plan. And the Marshall Plan was huge.
Yeah.
But it's a drop in the bucket compared to the One Belt, One Road. So while we have plenty of money for bombs, bullets, and death, we have no money for roads and airports and railways. We don't have any money for that. But I mean, just all you have to do is drive down the road and a person can see that, because all the potholes and the rusted undercarriage of any of the bridges throughout this country. And these guys are like you said, they're modernizing. The Delhi Mumbai industrial corridor is going to impact 24 cities, mapping out 11,000 generators that are going to feed these cities. And what their next step is in the beginning in June is that they're going to move these 11,000 generator transfer stations in order to accommodate this new highway. And the highway, I haven't gotten that far into it at this point, so I'm not exactly sure how large it is, how many lanes, or what the deal is, but it's going to be specifically designed for hauling freight. And then they've got the railway, they've got a freight railway and a bullet train, 6 new airports. We don't hear about any of that in the West. Nothing. There's nothing like that. The last airport that was built in the United States was the Denver airport, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, and that's
last major airport anyway.
Exactly. So, I mean, and when did that thing start? 2000, 98, somewhere in
No,
there?
it was. I think it got started in the late '80s,
Late 80s.
late '90s. Yeah.
Okay, so 30 years. You know, I mean, and they're building 6. They're going to build 6 new airports, and all of this is planned through 2040, and they have their first major timeline is 2030, and they're supposed to be. I believe they're projected to be more than 50% done, 60% done, somewhere in there by 2030. That's 13 years from now. And overall, 23 years from now. So we're not talking about a huge timeline. This is in our lifetime that this will be done.
You're assuming bombs don't start dropping.
Well, that's true. I am assuming that.
That's not an assumption I would put 100% confidence under.
Well, there are a lot of crazies out there right now.
Yeah, a lot of them are in the Defense Department. They're in D.C.
Yes.
And they're at Langley.
Yes. Yes, they are.
That's the problem.
That is the problem. And they're high on power. So, what's on your agenda for today, Dave?
I guess kind of to put a punctuation point on the topic at hand, the rising sun in the east, the setting sun in the west. I mean, it's amusing to me that the financial markets right now, all eyes are on this, political circus going on in D.C. with the healthcare, with the healthcare program, and the financial media is positioning it like, well, the market's hinging now on the fate of the healthcare reform. Well, as it turns out, the reforms they're trying to put in place, quote unquote reforms, are going to be worse than what's already in place, which shouldn't be surprising. And it's going to transfer a lot more wealth from the middle class to the disadvantaged class, lower class.
So what you're saying is that the federal government has once again touched something and destroyed it, and now they're trying to touch it again and make it worse? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, well, where have we seen that before? Besides everywhere.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, it just, this country is just paralyzed with politicking, and I think a lot of it at a high level is, how these guys are carving up what's left of the pie to distribute before they let the whole thing collapse.
Kind of seems that way. I mean, and there's not much pie left. I mean, about the biggest chunk of change, I think, are the pension funds, and we already are seeing big time moves on those funds. So, I mean,
well, yeah, they're already largely plundered because most of these pension funds are underfunded by 40, 50, 60%. And that's the same thing as having the fund issue debt. And so all it'll take is a good sell off in the stock market, and you're gonna just completely wipe out pension funds. And I can guarantee you, at that point in time, the big banks will be sitting on massive short positions. So
that's one of the things we need to watch for. Is that right? Or
yeah,
would we
the
be able
problem
to
is
see that?
you're not going to see it in the
Okay.
public numbers because it's going to be via over the counter derivatives. So yeah, you can watch how the banks are setting up, or how the commercials are setting up their S&P future positions, but that they know the public looks at that, or at least the markets look at that. So then so they set those up based on what they want you to see. It's what's going on off balance sheet. That's what I want to see, and that's what they won't let us see.
Because that's where the real action is.
That's where the real information content is.
Yep. Where we can't see it, behind closed doors.
Yeah, and it's actually, what they're going to do is based on a Rothschild model, because the Rothschilds, I think it was sometime during the 1800s, the British government bond market, there was a bubble being inflated in it, and the Rothschilds went short government bonds at one point, and then floated information that caused the government bond market to crash, and they covered their shorts and they went long.
Well, that's how they do it.
It's actually the guy who wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island reviewed that history. It's really interesting. Yeah, but that's probably what's going to happen in this country.
You think that's what we're being set up for right now?
Probably. Look at the stock market.
All about.
Anyone who looks at it is, you'd have to be a complete idiot not to understand that it's the most absurdly overvalued market in history. And now finally guys are starting to come out. I've been saying this for a long time. If you adjusted the current S&P 500 earnings and applied the GAAP accounting standards that were used in 1999 and adjusted the current earnings by those standards, you probably cut the S&P earnings in half, which would then give you the highest PE ratio in history on the S&P 500, because they've changed the GAAP accounting standards over time to make it easier for companies to manipulate their numbers and show better earnings.
Right. We've discussed that non-GAAP. They call it non-GAAP. I call it fraud.
But it's not. It's fraud. More than non-GAAP. It's also within GAAP itself, like changing depreciation schedules, pension funding regulations, or fund accounting standards. There's all kinds of accounting standards that let them create non-cash earnings that aren't real earnings, that don't even show up in the non-GAAP adjustments.
So it's just fraud on top of fraud.
Now it's accepted that, if you just look at our earnings on a non-GAAP basis, yeah, but that's not how you're supposed to look at them. There's no such thing as non-GAAP in 1999. It was actually, that idea was born out of the tech bubble, was this non-GAAP idea, but it wasn't nearly as extreme as it is now.
It's just fraud on top of fraud.
Fraud on top of fraud, yeah.
That's all that it is.
Yes.
And people should be in prison, and that's just the bottom line. And these institutions should be shut down, all their assets liquidated and returned to the people that have their funds held there. They should be shut down. They're all just criminal enterprises. But it's funny that as soon as we shift to discussing the economics and finance in the Western world, it goes back to the base of what it is, which is fraud and criminality. Whereas when we're discussing what's going on in the East, it is a lot different. What else you got?
That's all I got.
Well, all right. Well, I guess we'll end it there and pick it up on Monday and see where we stand.
Yes. I think that's a good idea. I have a feeling we'll be talking about the precious metals market on Monday.
It's a good possibility. There's a lot of action going on right now.
Yes, there is.
Well, all right, Dave. Well, you guys have a good weekend, and I guess I'll talk to you on Monday.
Sounds good. You have a good weekend too.
All right, buddy.